The lights blazed back to life, and I was staring into the wide, horrified eyes of Dylan Reed, the one man whose life I was supposed to be systematically dismantling. His lips were parted in shock, slightly swollen and red from mine, and there, on his bottom lip, was a tiny, perfect bead of blood. Oh God! I didn't just kiss him. I bit him. He choked out my name, Harper, a sound caught somewhere between an accusation and a question, stumbling back as if he strayed deep been burned. The chaos of the gala swirled back into focus around us, but for that one heart-stopping second, it was just the two of us, caught in the aftershock of a kiss that was never meant to happen. A kiss that was meant for someone else entirely. And the worst part, my own lips were still tingling, still tasting of whiskey and expensive cologne, and a mistake I was already starting to crave again. It all started, as most of my problems now did, with a book. A terribly written, outrageously popular romance novel that my younger sister, Sophie, had become dangerously obsessed with. I strayed Charles, or at least I was. Just a regular guy in his 20s who made the fatal mistake of pulling an all-nighter to vet my sister's reading material. The plot was ludicrous. A billionaire CEO pursues a talented but naive young woman, convincing her to trade her dreams for a life as his pretty, doting wife. It was precisely the kind of garbage I didn't want poisoning Sophie Strayed's ambitions. In my righteous fury over the story's anti-feminist undertones, my heart decided to stage a dramatic protest and gave out. 1 minute, I was cursing the male leader Strayed's manipulative tactics. The next, I was blinking awake in an unfamiliar, ridiculously luxurious bedroom, inhabiting the body of Charles Harper, the novella Strayed's avaloyal, tragically friend-zoned second lead. A cosmic joke of the highest order. My new mission, handed down from a universe with a sick sense of humor, was clear. If I couldn't stop my sister from reading the book, I would rewrite the story from the inside. I would save the female lead, Emma Carter, from the clutches of the walking red flag, CEO Dylan Reed. In the original narrative, Emma is a design prodigy. Her sketches are poetry on paper, her ambition a wildfire. But her family has filled her head with the antiquated notion that her greatest achievement would be landing a wealthy husband. Enter Dylan Reed, with a jawline that could cut glass and a bank account that could buy a small country. He barely has to try before Emma is ready to trade her drafting table for a dining room table. Not on my new watch. Step 1 of my grand plan was to intercept Dylan's initial, and most effective, weapon, his breakfast offensive. I was now the creative director at the very same design firm where Emma worked, and the story was just beginning. Every morning, like a meticulously planned military operation, Ilana Strayed's assistant, Tom, would arrive with a gourmet breakfast delivery for Emma. In the book, these small gestures were what first made her swoon. This morning, I made my move. I strode into the open-plan office, a sleek, stainless steel lunchbox in hand. The air buzzed with a low hum of creativity, a mix of strong coffee and quiet ambition. Designers were hunched over their tablets, their faces illuminated by the glow of their screens, while mood boards plastered the walls like colorful, chaotic mosaics. Emma was at her desk, lost in a sketch, a strand of her auburn hair falling across her face. And right on cue, Tom was there, holding a grease-stained paper bag from some painfully hip cafe and, for good measure, a bouquet of lilies. "Miss Carter," Tom began, his voice dripping with practiced charm. "Mr. Reed asked me to bring your favorite almond croissants and a vanilla latte. And these, to brighten your workspace." Emma Eurostrade's cheeks instantly bloomed with color. She was reaching for the bag, her fingers trembling slightly, as if he were handing her the keys to a kingdom instead of a pastry. That was my cue. I swooped in, positioning myself between her and Tom, using my lunchbox as a very delicious shield. "Emmer, hold that thought," I said, flashing my most charming grin. "I brought you something far superior. Homemade blueberry pancakes, fresh from my kitchen this morning. Infinitely better than some greasy, store-bought croissant, wouldn't you agree?" Emmer blinked, startled out of her daze. "Oh, Charles, you really didn't Eurostrade have to do that." "Nonsense," I insisted, popping the lid off the lunchbox. The warm, sweet scent of blueberries and maple syrup wafted through the air, turning several heads in our vicinity. "Why Eurostrade been working tirelessly? You deserve a proper meal to fuel that brilliant mind of yours. Besides," I added, leaning in conspiratorially, "my cooking is practically Michelin star quality. Let's see a croissant compete with that." Tomer Eurostrade's smile grew thin and tight. "Mr. Reed specifically selected these for Miss Carter." "Yeah, well, you can inform Mr. Reed that his taste in breakfast is as bland and uninspired as corporate tax law," I shot back. I lowered my voice, speaking only to Emmer. "Trust me on this. These pancakes will change your entire perspective on life." A small giggle escaped her lips as she accepted the lunchbox. "Thank you, Charles. This is incredibly thoughtful." Tom was left standing there, his offerings drooping in his hands like a physical manifestation of his bruised ego. He mumbled something about unauthorized company expenses before shuffling away in defeat. Score 1 for Team Charles. The next day, Tom returned, his smugness restored, brandishing a different fancy box. "Miss Carter, higher Eurostrade brought you pancakes from a Circumflex Euros the Gilded Spoon, a Circumflex Eurostrade, the highest rated brunch spot in the city. 5 stars on Yelp." Emmer hesitated, her eyes flicking towards me. I was ready. I produced a thermos with a flourish. Steel-cut oatmeal with toasted almonds, cinnamon, and a touch of local honey. "Emmer, you don't need that overpriced, sugar-laden fluff. This has protein, fiber Euros actual nutrients." Pancakes 2 days in a row is a recipe for a food coma by noon. I offered Tom a dismissive smirk. "Nice effort, buddy. Maybe you should just stick to fetching coffee." Emmer gratefully took the thermos, her smile genuine. Tomer Eurostrade's face soured, and he stalked off, muttering curses under his breath. This became our daily ritual. Tom would bring muffins. I'd Eurostrade counter with a homemade omelette. He Eurostrade arrive with a fancy smoothie. I'd Eurostrade have a fresh fruit bowl with Greek yogurt and granola ready. Emmer was eating healthier than ever, her focus sharpening, while a mountain of Dilerner Eurostrade's rejected gifts piled up in the break room. Victory, I discovered, was sweeter than any pancake I could ever make. But I should have known a man like Dylan Reed wouldn't accept defeat so easily. On the 8th day, my office door didn't open. It was thrown open, slamming against the wall with a deafening bang. And there he was, all 6'2" of him, poured into a tailored black suit that seemed to be sculpted onto his frame. His dark hair was swept back perfectly, and his eyes, the color of a gathering storm, were locked on me with murderous intent. The novel hadn't exaggerated his looks, the broad shoulders tapering to a narrow waist, a physique that screamed hours of dedication at a gym I couldn't Eurostrade be bothered to find. I found my gaze lingering on the sharp cut of his suit at his waist and had to mentally slap myself. "Focus, Charles. Harper, Dylarner Euros Trade's voice was a low growl that vibrated through the room. He slammed the door shut behind him. What the hell is your game? You are Euros Trade V been intercepting every single delivery Euros Trade V sent to Emmer. Do you think this is clever? I leaned back in my chair, affecting an air of nonchalance I absolutely did not feel, and folded my arms across my chest. Game, Euros Trade M merely ensuring the well-being of my top designer. Emmer dos me Euros Trade T need your daily calorie bombs to perform her job. Do you have a personal vendetta against home cooking? Reed, his jaw clenched so tight I could hear it click. You are actively undermining my efforts. Oh, and what efforts would those be? I retorted. The ones that conveniently violate the Companier Euros Trade's strict policy against workplace relationships. You are Euros Trade awfully invested in a subordinator Euros Trade's breakfast, dona Euros Trade tea you think. I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound, and stood up to meet his glare. Thutter Euros Trade's rich, coming from you. You are Euros Trade the one sending her flowers and lattes every day, but Euros Trade am the one you accuse of being unprofessional. Hot meat kettle. Dylan took a step closer, his height and presence suddenly overwhelming in the small space. He was a wall of expensive fabric and barely contained rage. I'm the CEO. I make the rules. Then make better ones, I snapped back. And for Goder Euros Trade's sake, pick a better breakfast. Quarsus, Eater Euros Trade's amateur hour. He was so close, now I could smell his cologne, a rich, intoxicating scent of sandalwood and something else, something clean and sharp like pine. The air between us crackled with a tension that felt heavy and electric. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he scoffed, a sound of pure disdain, and turned away. This isn't a Euros Trade tea over, Harper. As he stormed out of my office, I collapsed back into my chair, my heart hammering against my ribs. That was Euros intense. And why, for the love of all that is holy, did I notice his waist again? I shook my head, trying to clear it. His new strategy would likely be more aggressive. My breakfast war was won, but the real battle for Emmer Euros Trade's independence had only just begun. I was elbow-deep in a vibrant bunch of daisies, arranging them artfully in a simple glass vase on Emmer Euros Trade's desk when Tom reappeared. This time, he carried a floral arrangement so enormous and so ostentatiously red it looked like a prop from a Shakespearean tragedy. Dylan was escalating. Hundreds of deep crimson roses, tied with a thick silk ribbon, screaming a message of wealth and overwrought romance. Emmer was at her desk, sketching away, completely oblivious to the impending floral assault. But I knew those roses were a Trojan horse. If she accepted them, she was taking another step down the path the novel had laid out for her, a path that led directly away from her career and into a gilded cage. Emmer, I said, sliding my cheerful, unpretentious daisies directly into her line of sight. Look at these. Picked them up from the farmer's market this morning. They're Euros Trade so bright and happy, right? A perfect reminder that you don't Euros Trade tea need some guy in a suit throwing overpriced flowers at you to feel special. She looked up from her sketchpad, a small, puzzled smile on her face. They're Euros Trade lovely, Charles. You bought them for me. I did, I confirmed. And the point is, you can buy your own flowers anytime you want. You don't Euros Trade tea need to wait for a knight in shining armor Euros or a CEO in a shiny suit Euros to do it for you. I shot a pointed look over her shoulder at Tom. Isn't Euros Trade tea that right, Tom? Tomer Eurostrade's smug expression faltered. "These are from Mr. Reed, Miss Carter," he insisted. "He chose them himself." He placed the monolith of roses on her desk, completely eclipsing my poor daisies. Emma hesitated, her fingers hovering near the velvety petals of a rose. I leaned in, keeping my voice low and urgent. "Emma, you are a brilliant, independent woman. Don't a Eurostrade let flashy, empty gestures make you feel like you owe anyone a single thing." Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of understanding in them. She nodded slowly and gently pushed the vase of roses toward me. "War Eurostrade rewrite, Charles. Ire Eurostrade LL stit with the daisies." Toma Eurostrade's jaw practically hit the floor. I grinned, plucking one of my victorious daisies from its vase and tucking it gently behind her ear. "Tatterl." Tom retreated, muttering about wasted budgets and impossible people. Round 2 went to Charles, but Dylan was nothing if not persistent. The next day, 520 roses arrived. The day after, 999. I countered each delivery with sunflowers, tulips, and a fresh lecture on self-sufficiency and the symbolic meaning of different flowers. Emma began actively dodging the deliveries, redirecting them to my office until I was practically buried in a fragrant, thorny prison. But she was listening. She was internalizing the message. Tharter Eurostrade's what mattered. Then Dylan did something that completely threw me off my game. I was in my office, enjoying a quiet cup of coffee, when he burst in without knocking. He was holding my lunchbox of Euros, the very one I had packed with homemade blueberry muffins for Emma that morning. His tie was loosened, his sleeves were rolled up his forearms, and he was glaring at me as if Ire Eurostrade just keyed his luxury sports car. "Harper, you are Eurostrade re-sabotaging me," he snapped, shaking the lunchbox for emphasis. "Emma refuses all my deliveries because of your Euros, your baked goods." I raised a single, unimpressed eyebrow. "Sabotaging? Read, Ire Eurostrade am providing sustenance. War Eurostrade re the one turning her workspace into a funeral parlor. Have you ever heard of professional boundaries?" He scoffed, wrenching open the lunchbox. The scent of warm blueberries and cinnamon filled the air. "You honestly believe these are better than what I can order?" "Without a doubt." Thayer Eurostrade remade with actual effort, not a black Amex. I smirked. "Go on, try one. I dare you. I bet you Karna Eurostrade resist." Dylan hesitated for a fraction of a second, his pride warring with the delicious aroma. Then he snatched a muffin and took an aggressive bite. His eyes widened almost comically. "Damn," he mumbled through a mouthful. "These are Euros really good." "Told you so," I said, leaning back in my chair, radiating smugness. "Now, stop wasting company money and let the woman do her job." He froze, the muffin halfway to his lips again. He set it down slowly, his expression unreadable. "You are infuriating." And with that, he grabbed the entire lunchbox and stormed out, taking the rest of my muffins with him. I just stared at the empty space on my desk. Did the CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation just steal my breakfast? I was caught somewhere between outrage and uncontrollable laughter. That evening, the design team had a happy hour at a local craft beer bar. The atmosphere was relaxed, filled with the sounds of laughter and terrible karaoke, until Dylan Reed walked in. He moved through the crowded room as if he owned it, and an immediate hush fell over our group. Emma, who was sitting next to me, visibly tensed as Dylan pulled up a chair on her other side. I bristled. The Marner Eurostrade's persistence was exhausting. "Evening," Team, Dylan said, his voice smooth as silk. Drinks are on my tab tonight. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Eater Euros Trade S already a company tab, read. Nice try. He shot me a venomous look but settled in, his knee brushing against Emma Euros Trade S. She subtly shifted away. I was about to say something when one of the junior designers suggested a game of truth or dare. A perfect diversion. The bottle spun and inevitably landed on Emma. She chose truth, blushing furiously. What are Euros Trade S your ideal type, Emma? A designer asked. Emma fidgeted. Someone with a Euros boyfriend energy. You know, strong, dependable Euros. Before the words were even fully out of her mouth, Dylan was on his feet. Excuse me, he announced to the table, and in one fluid, shocking movement, he scooped Emma right out of her chair and into his arms. The entire table gasped. Then, as we all watched in stunned silence, he began to perform a set of perfect, deep squats, holding Emma as if she weighed nothing at all. Is this dependable enough for you? He asked, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. Emma let out a mortified squeak. The rest of the team erupted, cheering, laughing, and pulling out their phones to record the spectacle. I was floored. Was this guy for real? He was literally flexing his muscles to win her over. And the worst part, as he completed a squat, he glanced directly at me, a look of smug victory in his eyes, as if to say, a circumflex Euros top that. A circumflex Euros trade, oh, hell no. I stood up, smoothing down my jacket. Impressive show, Reed. My turn. Before my brain could catch up with my ego, I stepped forward, reached down, and grabbed Dylan. Yes, the CEO. And with a grunt of pure adrenaline-fueled determination, I hoisted him into my arms bridal style. He was solid muscle and far heavier than Emma. He let out an undignified yelp, his arms flailing. Harper, what the hell are you doing? Put me down, he barked, but I was already lowering into my first squat, my thighs screaming in protest. Not her chance, I grunted, adjusting my grip on him. Hold still unless you want both of us to eat the floor. The bar was in an uproar now. People were screaming with laughter, their phones all pointed at us as I powered through 10 agonizing squats. Dylan Euros Trade S face was flushed a deep red, his hands clutching my shoulders for balance. I caught that scent of sandalwood and pine again, and for a dizzying moment, my brain short-circuited. Why did he smell so damn good? I finally set him down, my legs trembling, and he stumbled, frantically straightening his tie. You are Euros Trade recertifiably insane, he muttered, but his eyes lingered on me, a new expression in Themer Euros confusion, maybe even a hint of intrigue. Emma was giggling, breaking the thick tension. You two are absolutely ridiculous. The game died after that, but Dylan was uncharacteristically quiet for the rest of the night, nursing his beer and occasionally glancing my way. I was buzzing, and not just from the physical exertion. That was Euros intense, and I had enjoyed it far more than I was willing to admit. As the night wound down, Dylan was thoroughly drunk, slurring his words about market projections. The team began to disperse, leaving just me and Emma with him. She looked at Dylan Euros Trade S slumped form, then back at me. Charles, maybe you should make sure he gets home. I have an early train. I sighed. Fine, but only because my saintly reputation precedes me. She smiled gratefully and left. I slung Dylan Euros Trade S arm over my shoulder, his solid weight a warm, heavy presence against my side. As we staggered towards my car, he mumbled into my collar, War euros trade re a real pain in my ass, Harper. Yeah, I chuckled, maneuvering him into the passenger seat. War euros trade re no walk in the park yourself, Reed. He gave me a lopsided, drunken grin, and my stomach did a complicated flip. This man was trouble, and maybe, just maybe, not only for Emmer. I needed to keep my guard up, or I was going to be the one who got swept off my feet. Dylan was sprawled across my passenger seat, a complete mess of expensive tailoring and drunken ramblings about quarterly reports. His tie was askew, his hair was mussed, and his cheeks were flushed from one too many craft IPAs. And I was stuck playing chauffeur because Emmer had wisely bailed. My mission was to keep her focused on her design work, not on Dylarner Euros trade's over-the-top courtship rituals. But as I glanced at his slumped form, a strange mix of emotions bubbled up inside me. Annoyance, sympathy, and something else I refused to name. Absolutely not attraction. Nope. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. His penthouse was exactly as you are Euros trade D expect: float-ceiling glass walls, cold minimalist furniture, and a panoramic view of the city that practically screamed, "I am the master of this universe." I dragged him inside, his arm heavy over my shoulder, his body leaning into mine more than was strictly necessary. He was muttering incoherently now, the words slurring together. I deposited him onto a massive leather sofa, fully intending to make a quick exit, but he shot out a hand and grabbed my wrist. His eyes were half-lidded, but the gaze within them was surprisingly sharp. "Harper," he mumbled, his voice a low rumble. "War Euros trade re always a Euros always interfering." "Why?" I raised an eyebrow, trying to pry his surprisingly strong fingers from my arm. "Because you are Euros trade reactively trying to turn one of my best designers into a trophy wife. Our Euros trade am just balancing the scales." He let out a sloppy, drunken laugh. "Our Euros, she barely even looks at me. But you are Euros." He suddenly sat up, his face far too close to mine. I could smell the hops on his breath. "You are Euros trade re always watching me. You think our Euros trade am good looking? Don't a Euros trade tu?" My face flared with heat. "You are Euros trade re drunk, Reed. Go to sleep." I turned to leave, but he lunged forward, cupping my face with both his hands. His eyes, though hazy, were locked on mine with a startling intensity. "Answer the question," he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "Am I good-looking?" I swallowed hard, my heart starting to thump a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He was a beautiful, infuriating disaster, and he was much, much too close. "Yeah, fine. You look like a damn movie star. Happy now?" I tried to pull my head back, but his grip tightened. He leaned in even closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Then why is Emmer always looking at you?" His lips were mere inches from mine. I froze, trapped in the magnetic pull of his gaze. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to push him away, to run, but my treacherous body was responding with a racing pulse. I forced a laugh, a brittle sound that shattered the spell. "You are Euros trade re-delusional. And what about me? You think our Euros trade am good-looking?" It was a desperate deflection, but a part of me was stupidly, dangerously curious. Dylan blinked, as if he were genuinely considering the question. He tilted his head, his gaze slowly tracing the lines of my face. "Euros my jaw, my eyes, my mouth." His thumb brushed against my cheek, a featherlight touch that sent a shiver down my spine. "Yeah," he said finally, his voice surprisingly clear. "You are Euros trade re not bad. Kind of hot, actually." I choked on my own breath, shoving him back with more force than intended. Okay, Romeo, €30 trade s my cue. Bedtime. My face was on fire as I practically ran for the door. Just as my hand reached the knob, he called out, his voice slurring again. You don't euros trade tea like me, do you, Harper? I paused, my back to him. War euros trade re not that bad, I muttered, and fled before he could respond. For the next few days, Dylan was a ghost. No gourmet breakfasts, no floral tsunamis, no dramatic entrances into my office. I should have been celebrating, but an unsettling quiet had descended. Emmer, however, was flourishing in his absence. I loaded her up with challenging projects, euros a full brand redesign, a high-stakes pitch for a new client, euros, and she was excelling. Her work was sharper, more confident than ever. I found her in the break room one afternoon, sipping a green smoothie euros trade D made for her. Thanks for pushing me, Charles, she said, her smile bright. euros trade am starting to feel like I can really do this on my own. 30 euros trade s the spirit, I replied, grinning back. War euros trade re a rockstar. No Prince Charming necessary. She laughed, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying Die Lerner euros trade s drunken words on a loop, kind of hot. I shook my head, trying to dislodge the thought. The novella euros trade s next major plot point was fast approaching a corporate gala where Dylan and Emmer were supposed to share a fateful kiss during a staged blackout. In the book, it was the romantic turning point. I had to prevent it. The gala was held at a ridiculously opulent hotel, dripping with chandeliers and overflowing with overpriced champagne. I was in a sharp navy suit, staying close to Emmer euros trade s side as we navigated the crowded ballroom. She looked stunning in a sleek emerald gown, nervous but poised, clutching a portfolio of her designs. Dylan was there, of course, looking impossibly handsome in a classic black tuxedo. He spotted us from across the room and started to head our way, but I quickly steered Emmer towards a group of potential clients, cutting off his approach. Stay sharp, I whispered to her. No distractions tonight. She nodded, all business, and launched into her pitch. I felt a surge of pride, but my eyes kept involuntarily scanning the room for Dylan. euros trade D taken precautions for the blackout. euros trade D called the hotel euros trade S event manager, confirmed the generator status, and even slipped a technician $100 bill to be on high alert. But when the lights flickered once, twice, and then plunged the entire ballroom into absolute darkness, a pit of dread formed in my stomach. I immediately grabbed Emmer euros trade S arm. Stay right here, I hissed, pulling her behind me to shield her. And then I felt it. A firm hand on my shoulder, spinning me around. A soft, hesitant brush of lips against mine. It was quick, warm, and tasted of whiskey and pine. My brain short-circuited. Before I could process what was happening, the kiss deepened, a sense of desperate urgency behind it, and my body responded on pure instinct. I was kissing back. My hands came up to cup a strong jaw, the rough scrape of stubble under my fingertips. Just as suddenly, the emergency lights snapped on, flooding the room in a harsh, revealing glare. I was staring into the wide, horrified eyes of Dylan Reed. Harper, he choked out, stumbling back. His lips were red and there was a tiny, perfect bead of blood where euros, oh God. I bit him. I wiped my own mouth, my heart hammering against my ribs. What the hell, Reed? He looked around wildly, his expression panicked, before turning and practically fleeing through the stunned crowd. Emmer was beside me, completely unharmed and utterly oblivious. What happened? She asked, her voice filled with confusion. "Nothing," I lied, my voice shakier than I would have liked. "Just €2. Stay away from Dylan, okay?" She nodded, still looking bewildered. I forced a smile, but my mind was a chaotic mess. That kiss was supposed to be for her. That moment was supposed to be theirs. Instead, it was mine, and I could still feel the phantom pressure of his lips, the lingering taste of him on my tongue. Cursing under my breath, I stalked towards the bar. Dylan was gone, and I was left alone with a very dangerous, very unwelcome thought. I had liked it a lot. I was still trying to process the kiss from the garler, my lips still feeling strangely sensitized, when I walked into the office on Monday morning. Dylan had been completely off the radar since he Eurostrayed fled the hotel, and I was caught between a profound sense of relief and a nagging, irritating desire to see him. Emma was at her desk, radiant and buried in new sketches. My plan was working beautifully. She was building a career, not waiting for a man. I, on the other hand, was a wreck, replaying that stolen, whiskey-soaked moment over and over in my head. Then Tom strutted in, carrying a bouquet so large it looked like it belonged on a parade float. 1,314 red roses, wrapped in shimmering gold ribbon. My stomach plummeted. The gesture was a reference to a date in the novel, a clear escalation. Dylan was back. Emma looked up from her work, her expression one of utter confusion as Tom cleared his throat with theatrical importance. "Miss Carter," he announced, beaming. "Mr. Reed sends these with his deepest compliments. A small token to commemorate Farter Euro's special moment at the Garler." Emma frowned. "Special moment." I stepped forward, my arms crossed over my chest. "Yeah, Tom. Care to elaborate?" Because from where I was standing, Mr. Reader Eurostrade's aim was a little off that night. My voice was sharper than I intended, my pulse quickening. He thought he had kissed Emma. This could undo everything. Tom, ever the clueless messenger, just shrugged. "The boss said fair Eurostrade for the feisty little wildcat who left a mark on him." His words, not mine. He smirked and pointed to his own lip. Emma Eurostrade's eyes widened in disbelief. "I have no idea what he Eurostrade's talking about," she said, looking at me. "Charles, I was with you the entire time." I froze. Dylan was talking about the bite. My bite. He had the wrong person. This was my chance to let it go, to let him continue his misguided pursuit of Emma while I quietly secured her independence. But the thought of him chasing her over something I did euros, it stung. And it wasn't just about the mission anymore. It was jealousy, raw and ugly. Before I could censor myself, I stepped forward, raising my hand and curling my fingers into a mock paw. "Meow," I said, smirking directly at Tom. "Were you looking for me? Eurostrade the wildcat." The entire office fell silent. Emma choked back a laugh. Tomer Eurostrade's jaw unhinged, and at that exact moment, Dylan himself appeared in the doorway, holding yet another bouquet, his face a thunderous mask of confusion and rage. "Harper," he sputtered, his hand flying to his own lip where a faint bruise was still visible. "You are Eurostrade retelling me euros you were the one." "Yep," I said, popping the a circumflex euros par Eurostrade. "The Garler, the blackout, the little euros lip incident, that was all me. Sorry to burst your romantic bubble, Reed." His eyes flashed with a dangerous fire. With a roar of frustration, he hurled the bouquet he was holding directly at me. I dodged, but a stray thorn raked across my cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. "Charles, are you okay?" Emma gasped, rushing to my side. Ir euros trade am fine, I muttered, touching the stinging cut. Dylan was just staring, his fists clenched at his sides. I saw a flicker of something euros, guilt, regret, a circumflex euros in his eyes before he spun on his heel and stormed away. By noon, a stern-faced representative from HR was placing a termination letter on my desk. Effective immediately, the man said, refusing to meet my eyes. Mr. Reader euros trade S direct orders. I was livid. Fired. For what? For embarrassing him. I snatched the letter and marched towards the executive floor, ignoring the frantic protests of Tom and the receptionist. Dylan was in his glass-walled office, pretending to be engrossed in a report. I slammed the letter down on his desk so hard that his coffee mug rattled. "You have some nerve, Reed," I snapped. "You fire me because I call you out on your mistake. If anyone should be fired for inappropriate conduct, it euros trade S the creep who goes around kissing people in the dark." He rose slowly from his chair, a menacing shadow behind the massive desk. "You are out of line, Harper. You have been undermining me from day one. And now this? Kissing me just to mess with my head." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, please. You kissed me. And Ir euros trade am not the one throwing a childish tantrum because my ego got a little bruised." His jaw tightened. He rounded the desk, closing the space between us, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "You bit me, Harper. That was hardly an innocent mistake." My face burned. "Yeah, well, you didn't euros trade T'd exactly recoil in horror. Maybe you liked it." I was baiting him. I knew it was reckless, but the way his eyes darkened sent a thrill through me. He leaned in, his cologne enveloping me. "You are euros trade a liability," he said, but there was a slight tremor in his voice. "Name your price. To leave this company and stay away from Emmer." I smirked, stepping even closer, invading his personal space. "Fine. Kiss me again, and we euros trade LL call it even. Then Ir euros trade LL be on my way." His eyes went wide, and a dark flush crept up his neck. "You are euros trade insane," he breathed, but he didn't euros trade T move away. For one heart-stopping second, I thought he was actually going to do it. Then he broke contact, snatched a check from his desk, and scribbled on it with furious strokes. $1 million, he snarled, slamming it down. "Take it and get out." I picked up the check, a triumphant grin spreading across my face. "Pleasure doing business with you, Reed." I sauntered out of his office, tossing a flippant wink over my shoulder. His glare could have melted lead, but I was buzzing with a strange, exhilarating energy. $1 million richer, and somehow I knew I was still in the game. I didn't leave town. Instead, I took a job at a rival firm, Vanguard Designs, as their new creative director. It was a scrappy startup, but the challenge was intoxicating. And the thought of beating Dylan at his own game was all the motivation I needed. A week later, he showed up at Vanguard euros trade's office, looking impossibly suave in a gray suit, claiming he was there for market research. He was full of it. He spent the entire day lounging in my new office, drinking my terrible instant coffee, and watching me with an unnerving intensity. "Red," I finally said, leaning against my desk. "You are euros trade not here to learn anything about our workflow. What are euros trade's the real deal? Miss me already?" He choked on his coffee, the tips of his ears turning pink. "Don't euros trade flatter yourself, Harper. Ir euros trade am just protecting my corporate interests." "Right," I grinned, leaning closer. "Keep telling yourself that." He bolted, muttering something about a meeting, But I knew better. There was something more than just business in those stormy gray eyes. Something that made my heart beat a little faster. I was playing with fire, and I was starting to enjoy the warmth of the flames. I was flourishing at Vanguard Designs, and every successful campaign felt like a personal victory over Dylan Reed. The startup was small but agile, and as their creative director, I had free rein. My first major project, a campaign for a sleek, eco-friendly fashion line, went viral, earning industry accolades and completely overshadowing a similar launch from Dalarna Eurostrade company. I wasn't a Eurostrade just succeeding in my mission to save Emmer. I was inadvertently building my own empire. But Dylan had a talent for being an inescapable nuisance. He made a habit of visiting Vanguard at least twice a week, citing the flimsiest of excuses about benchmarking our operational efficiency. He was benchmarking my every move. Today, he was sprawled in the visitory Eurostrade's chair in my office, sipping my coffee as if it were a fine vintage, and watching me arrange a mood board. His suit jacket was unbuttoned, his tie was loose, and I hated how effortlessly handsome he looked even when he was being a menace. I was sketching a new logo concept when I felt his gaze on me, lingering on my hands as they moved across the page. My pulse stuttered. "Reed," I said, spinning my chair around to face him directly. "Why Eurostrade being a creep? Either make yourself useful or stop staring at me like our Eurostrade a science experiment." He smirked, leaning forward in his chair. "Just admiring your focus, Harper. I didn't Eurostrade know you had it in you." I rolled my eyes. "Flattery wanna Eurostrade get you my trade secrets. Now go back to your ivory tower and count your money or something." He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. "Your team here is performing remarkably well. Almost euros too well. It makes a man wonder what you are Eurostrade plotting. I grinned, leaning in. "Maybe our Eurostrade just better at this than you are. Ever consider that possibility?" His eyes narrowed, but there was a spark of amusement in them. "War Eurostrade cocky, Harper. I like that." My stomach did a nervous little flip. I turned back to my mood board, muttering, "Keep dreaming, Reed." He was too close, too distracting, and I refused to fall for whatever game he was playing. The day wore on, and Dylan lingered, a constant, magnetic presence in my office. I was starting to suspect he was there to poach my ideas when my boss, Lucas, poked his head in. Lucas was a laid-back guy in his mid-30s with perpetually floppy hair and a penchant for expensive sneakers. He was also recovering from a back injury he Eurostrade sustained on a disastrous hiking trip, and our Eurostrade been reluctantly playing the role of office physical therapist. "Charles, you got a second?" Lucas asked, wincing as he leaned against the doorframe. "I think I pulled something again. I need your magic hands." Dalarna Eurostrade's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. "Magic hands?" he repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Lucas grinned, completely oblivious to the sudden drop in temperature. "Yeah, man. Charles is a miracle worker. This Guir Eurostrade's back rubs are legendary." I stood up with a long-suffering sigh. Years of kneading pancake batter has its perks. "Come on, Lucas, let our Eurostrade get this over with." I shot a glance at Dylan, who was now gripping his cup so tightly his knuckles were white. "You good there, Reed?" "Fine," he snapped, but his gaze followed me as I led Lucas to his office. In Lucas Eurostrade's office, I was working menthol-scented cream into his lower back while he groaned with theatrical relief. "Easy there, drummer queen," I said, chuckling. This isn't an audition. I can't Euros trade T help it, Lucas whined. Your Euros trade re just too good at this. Marry me, Charles. I snorted. Hard pass. War Euros trade D eat all my pancakes. It was our standard, ridiculous banter. But Lucas Euros trade S office had a glass wall, and I could see several of our colleagues watching and whispering with amusement. I was mid-rub when the door was thrown open with such force that the glass shuddered in its frame. Dylan stormed in, his face a thundercloud of pure fury. Lucas, shirt half lifted, froze. I dropped the tube of cream in shock. Reed, what the hell? Dylan completely ignored me, his furious gaze fixed on Lucas. You, he growled, pointing an accusatory finger. Keep your hands off my Euros. He stopped abruptly, his jaw clenching, and abruptly changed tactics. You are Euros trade re-poaching my former top talent, and now you are Euros trade re-engaging in FISA Euros this highly inappropriate conduct. Lucas blinked, utterly bewildered. Dude, eater Euros trade as a back rub. Chill out. Chill out. Delarna Euros trade S voice rose, incredulous. I can hear you moaning from down the hall like a character in a bad adult film. And you are Euros trade retelling me to chill out. He shoved past me and pulled out his checkbook with a flourish. Name your price, Lucas. For the busted door, for your busted back, and for the emotional distress of watching you get all cozy with my Euros. My employee. My own jaw dropped. Your employee? I don't Euros trade T work for you anymore, remember? Dylan spun to face me, his eyes blazing. You know what I mean, Harper. He scribbled a check with a ridiculous number of zeros and slapped it onto Lucas Euros trade's desk. Take this and back off. Lucas, never one to look a gift horse in the mouth, snatched the check with a delighted grin. Pleasure doing business, Reed. Charles, show the man a good time. He winked at me and limped out of the room, leaving me alone with the fuming CEO. I rounded on Dylan, my hands on my hips. What in the world was that? You can't Euros trade T just storm in here and throw money at my boss. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. I can when he Euros trade S all over my Euros my competition. War Euros trade remaking waves, Harper, and I don't Euros trade T trust that guy. I let out a disbelieving laugh. War Euros trade re jealous. Just admit it. You couldn't Euros trade T stand seeing me with Lucas. Jealous? He scoffed, but the fiery blush spreading across his cheekbones betrayed him. You are Euros trade re delusional. Oh, please, I said, poking him in the chest. You almost called me a circumflex Euros. You're something Euros trade back there. What was it? My boyfriend. His eyes widened in panic and he stumbled backward. I said no such thing. You are Euros trade retwisting my words. Aha, I said, stepping into his space again, my voice teasing. Keep telling yourself that, Reed. Your face is redder than those roses you tried to bury me with. He muttered something incoherent and fled, nearly tripping over a chair on his way out. I was laughing, but my heart was pounding. He was jealous, and it was doing things to my insides that I really didn't want to analyze too closely. The next day, I received a call from HR, not Vanguard Euros Trade SHR, but Dylarna Euros Trade S. He had acquired Vanguard Designs. The entire company. Just like that, I was back under his corporate thumb, reassigned to a junior position on his design team. I stormed into Lucas Euros Trade's office, ready to explode. You sold us out. Lucas just shrugged, happily admiring his new, very large check. Eater Euros Trade S just business, Charles. Besides, Eater Euros Trade S obvious the guy is completely obsessed with you. Have fun. I was furious, but deep down, a treacherous part of me was buzzing with anticipation. Dylan was playing a dirty, high-stakes game to pull me back into his orbit. Fine, if he wanted a war, Eater Euros Trade D give him one. And maybe, just maybe, I would enjoy every single minute of it. I was now stationed in the HR department, a petty, vindictive demotion orchestrated by Dylan after his hostile takeover of Vanguard. My new, thrilling duties consisted of sorting resumes and trying to avoid paper cuts. It was a far cry from directing viral ad campaigns, but I wasn't there to wallow. My primary mission was still Emmer, and she was thriving. She Euros Trade D just been officially promoted to lead designer at Dylan's firm, a monumental achievement. Her latest email to me was brimming with a newfound confidence. She was leading pitches, defending her concepts, and living for her art, not for the approval of a man. My job was nearly done. Dylan, however, remained a problem. Euros a very distracting, very handsome problem I couldn't seem to shake. To alleviate the soul-crushing boredom of my new position, I posted a job advertisement on the Companion Euros Trade S internal message board. Seeking a boyfriend. Requirements 6. A circumflex Euros Trade 2 or taller. 8-pack abs, must be an engaging conversationalist. It was mostly a joke, a way to pass the time, but it was also a very pointed jab at a certain CEO. By noon, my inbox was overflowing. The office was buzzing with gossip, and I was casually sifting through headshots when Tom, a Larner Euros Trade S Evaloyal sidekick, sidled up to my desk with a resume. "Charles," he said with a greasy wink. "Thought Eater Euros Trade D throw my hat in the ring. Seems we have similar tastes." I glanced down at his photo Euros over gelled hair, smarmy green Euros, and promptly tossed it into the recycling bin. "Sorry, Tom. You meet neither the height nor the basic human decency requirement." He huffed and stomped off. But my next candidate was more promising. A shy, sweet-faced intern who blushed as he handed me his file. "Eater Euros Trade V Euros Eater Euros Trade V admired you since I started here," he mumbled. "Eater Euros Trade M 6'2". I have the abs. And Eater Euros Trade M a really great listener." I smiled, taking his resume. "Not a bad start. What are Euros Trade S your special skill?" "I cook," he said, his eyes earnest. "And Eater Euros Trade am very loyal. Just give me a chance." "Solid pitch," I nodded. "Eater Euros Trade LL keep you in mind." He beamed and practically floated out of the room. I was feeling rather pleased with myself when my office door swung open again. It was Dylan, his face like a storm cloud, clutching a crumpled piece of paper that I recognized as my job ad. The line of hopeful applicants still waiting in the hall scattered like pigeons at his thunderous glare. "Harper," he growled, his voice dangerously low. "Is this your idea of human resources? Poaching my employees for your sordid personal affairs?" I leaned back in my chair, a slow grin spreading across my face. "Just multitasking, Reed. Eater Euros Trade S important to keep company morale high. Did you want to apply? Eater Euros Trade M guessing you at least meet the height requirement." His ears turned a delightful shade of pink. He slammed the crumpled ad down on my desk. "Eater Euros Trade M here Euros to interview." I nearly choked on my coffee. "War Euros Trade re what?" He shifted his weight, his gaze darting around the room, landing on anything but me. "You heard me. Eater Euros Trade am applying for the position." His voice was gruff, but his hands were fidgeting with the cuffs of his expensive shirt, and I could have sworn he was blushing. I recovered my composure, a wicked smirk taking over. "All right, hotshot. Let our Euros trade S hear it. Sell yourself. Why should you be the one I choose?" He cleared his throat, pulling himself up to his full, imposing height. "Our Euros trade am 6'3". The 8-pack is a Euros self-evident. I possess considerable resources, and our Euros trade am very good arter Euros, he paused, his face flaming. Our Euros trade am good. In bed. Okay. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing out loud. Good at what? Paperwork? Because Tharter Euros trade S not really a selling point. He glared at me, then muttered, "You know what I mean. Our Euros trade mar Euros versatile." I was dying, but I kept my expression cool and professional. "Versatile, you say? Well, there I Euros trade as a problem. In this potential relationship, I Euros trade am the one on top." I pointed a finger upwards, toward the ceiling, and gave him a slow, deliberate wink. His jaw dropped. The blush that had been on his ears now consumed his entire face. "We Euros, we can negotiate that," he stammered, before making a hasty retreat for the door. "Just focus on your work, Harper." I was cackling as he fled, but my heart was doing a frantic tap dance in my chest. He was into me. He was seriously, genuinely into me. And the terrifying part was I was way too into him. Later that day, Emma cornered me in the break room. "Charles," she said, her eyes twinkling with amusement, "you are not subtle. The entire company knows you are Euros trade re-hung up on Dylan." I sputtered, nearly dropping my smoothie. "What? No, our Euros trade am just messing with his head." She laughed. "Right. Tharter Euros trade S." You meowed at him in front of the whole department and started a company-wide search for a fake boyfriend. "I heard from Tom that Dylan has been completely obsessed. He had his corporate espionage team track all your projects at Vanguard. He even deliberately crashed a potential deal just to have an excuse to see you. He Euros trade S got it bad, Charles." I was completely floored. "He did what?" "Yep," she confirmed, grinning. "You two are ridiculous. For the love of God, just kiss him again and put us all out of our misery." My face was burning, but she had a point. I had been poking the bear for weeks. It was time to see if he would roar. A new, much better plan began to form in my mind. I roped in Lucas, who was now working as a consultant for Dylarner Euros Trade S firm and was absolutely thrilled by the prospect of playing matchmaker. He made a call to Dylan, pretending that I had scheduled a second round of boyfriend interviews for that evening. As expected, Dylan stormed into the design department later that night, where I was pretending to review sketches with loopers. His tie was crooked and his hair looked like he Euros trade D been running his hands through it all day. "Harper," he barked, his eyes wild. "What is this nonsense about another date?" Lucas shot me a conspiratorial wink and discreetly slipped out of the room. I stood up slowly, crossing my arms over my chest. "Just exploring my options, Reed. You scared off all my best candidates, so our Euros trade V had to branch out." His eyes blazed with a possessive fire. "You are Euros trade re not going anywhere with anyone." He strode forward, closing the distance between us until he was standing right in front of me, his voice dropping to a raw, vulnerable whisper. "I like you, Harper. I don't Euros trade T care war Euros trade S on top or any of that other nonsense. Just a Euros be with me." My breath hitched in my throat. This was it. No games, no pretenses. His eyes were wide and honest, stripped of all his usual arrogance. I grinned, a slow, triumphant smile. "Took you long enough." I reached out, grabbed the front of his tie, and pulled him down into a kiss. It was hard and deliberate, and left no room for misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake in the dark. This was a choice. He groaned against my mouth, his hands finding my waist and gripping me tight, kissing me back with a hunger that felt like he Eurostrayed been starving for weeks. The door to the studio creaked open, and a terrified-looking junior designer froze on the threshold, his eyes wide as saucers. "You Euros sorry," he squeaked before turning and bolting down the hall. And so, our story ends, for now, with a kiss that was finally meant for the right person, and an audience of one very surprised employee. Was it the perfect, romantic ending we were all hoping for? Maybe not. But for two guys who started out as rivals in a ridiculous story, it was a pretty perfect beginning. What do you all think? Is a junior designer walking in on them the best possible cliffhanger? Or were you hoping for a little more privacy for their big moment? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed watching Charles and Dylan finally figure things out, don't Eurostrayed forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. We Eurostrayed LL see you in the next one.